Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I'm one of your hosts, Noor Kyle, along with.
The other one of your hosts, Mushtaq Ali.
Thank you for joining us. It's really awesome this week. We have some new people participating with us live, lots of familiar faces. We're always happy to see. If you're joining us on the replay, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching along with us. We're happy you're here. Do we have any spiel we need to give today, Mishtok?
Yes, we do. Because if you are watching us on YouTube, which is what the replay is, um, thank you for watching us on YouTube. Let me encourage you, if you have not subscribed to our channel, to hit that subscribe button and hit the little bell so that you can be notified when we put out new videos. And we're going to be putting out more videos this year than ever before. It's frightening how many videos we're going to be putting out. All manner of subjects, long videos, short videos, tall videos, fat videos, all sorts of videos. You can have videos in every which way. We're going to be putting them out on every kind of topic that you can think of and some that you haven't thought of.
Yes, indeed. Yep. We're
And,
gonna.
don't forget to hit the like button. We'd like to have your likes. Or if you didn't like it, hit the hate button. That's okay too. We like the feedback. There is one guy who comes on and I think he watches the videos just so that he can hit the hate button. And I am so tickled by that. I can hardly stand it. Anytime he doesn't hate a video of ours, I feel bad.
Consistency. You miss
Yes.
it when it's not there. Yep. All right. So other than that, as always, we are always happy to have you guys join us live on this free group thing that we do. You can join us through our Facebook group, that's the Nine-Sided Circle Forum, or you can join us through our mailing list, which you can sign up for below. Other than that, you can do one-on-ones with us, either Mushtaq or myself.
Or both.
And you can also do both, of course. Yep. So we do those as well. And we do 1 hour sessions as frequently as you want to, we need to, whatever works for you and works for us as well. We're just happy to get to know you. So thank you.
Yes. And we can guarantee that you'll learn something. We're not sure what, but you'll learn something.
That's how it works in Sufism. Okay, so for this evening, we are going to be talking about this idea of being in the world but not of it. Do you want to get us started, Mushan?
Yes. So, a lot of religions have the idea of being a monk, withdrawing from the world. And that's a valid path. It works for some people. Um, and it's interesting because Mr. Gurdjieff uh, outlined the four ways. He said there's the way of the fakir, the way of the monk, and the way of the yogi. Those are the three main ways. All of those tend to have an idea of withdrawal from the world in them. And then there is what he called the way of the Sly Man, which is to develop all of these attributes that the three ways develop, which is learning through the body, learning through the heart, learning through the intellect, developing all of them, but doing it in the world, doing it completely engaged in life. Now, I'm pretty sure that he stole this from the Sufis, or he was a Sufi or something like that, but it doesn't matter because that has been a tradition amongst Sufis since the Prophet Muhammad, who said, "There is no monkery in Islam," meaning there is no uh, shedding your life and going off and living in retreat for your whole life. Um, that path believes that you should be engaged. And so that's the topic of this evening's discussion, is this idea of engagement as a spiritual path. And I will tell you a story, since we mentioned the prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and all of those things that you're supposed to say when you say his name. He doesn't care, you know that. He really doesn't care. But so the wife of one of the prophet's companions came to the prophet one day and said, "Oh, prophet of God, you must help me. My husband, he spends every day in fasting and all night standing in prayer. He doesn't work, and my children are dressed in rags. We have no food in the house. We're starving, and my clothes are all torn up. I had to borrow this dress to come and talk to you because I could not come before you in the rags that I had. Please help." And so the prophet called his companion in and he said, "I hear that you fast every day and that you stand all night in prayer." And the man said, "Yes, I do, O prophet." And the prophet said, "Don't do that. Just don't do that. Fast sometimes, eat sometimes, stand in prayer sometimes, sleep sometimes. Your body has rights over you. Your eyes have rights over you. Your wife has rights over you. Your children has rights over you. And you must take care of all of those." And with that one simple directive, he started a tradition of spiritual engagement to live fully in this world and yet at the same time be deeply in your practice. Does that make sense? Do you follow that line of thought? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs this way if you're totally unsure.
Yeah, we got a few thumbs up. All right. Does
Okay,
anybody feel some resistance to that?
I see one weakness is being able to generate enough intensity with all the varied things that life causes you to have to do, involved with your children, involved with work, involved with the church, or what, all these areas that could be a distraction.
they could be a distraction. You're absolutely correct. That can be a problem. So the solution to that problem is to use all of these things as your practice. So traditionally, Sufi orders have skills that they like to do, and you can tell some of them by the names that they have. But in Morocco, there's a Sufi order that are master perfumers. Some Sufi orders specialize in medicine. Some specialize in music. Like the Chishtis in India. The founder of our order was a wood carver, and he was known far and wide in the town that he lived for carving wooden spoons. He made the best spoons ever. And when you can sit and carve a spoon with complete and utter attention, that becomes practice. When you can be present with your children when they are acting like children, that becomes a practice too. All work can become practice. All interactions can become practice. And that's an important consideration. Yes, Jonathan.
Does there need to be a common thread that holds all of these things together?
Yes, there does. And that common thread is being awake in the moment. The common thread is use every instance as a way to see the mechanical nature of your ego arising and be awake to that and let that go.
So that may entail being in your breath,
Yes.
being more attuned to your body through your breath, the sensations you're experiencing, the emotions that come up, instead of wrenching a grip into them, letting them flow through. This is especially true when you watch children go through their emotions. We have something to learn from that, just how it strikes them and they feel it, and then it drifts away.
Is that making more sense, Jonathan?
Cool.
Good. So, the Sufis traditionally had tekkes and khanagas and durgas and Sufi houses. These were not like, say, Christian monasteries or Buddhist monasteries. They were places where you went to spend a day, or you could go on retreat there and spend up to a month there. But then you were expected to go back to the world in almost every case. And there was some logic behind that, because if your spiritual life takes away from the rest of your life, your spiritual life is probably not that good for you. The example I always think of is Siddhartha, right? The prince who was, kept away from all bad things when he was young, and his father got him a beautiful wife and he had a wonderful child or two, and then he ditched them and wandered off to be an ascetic and withdrew from life. From a Sufi point of view, that was a dick move. And we would disapprove of that. I mean, it all turned out well in the end, but a Sufi would say that your family comes first. So there's an interesting thought for you. Your family comes before doing things like going to the khanaga for a zikr.
Mm-hmm.
If your child is sick, you stay home and you take care of them. You will. God would be mad at you if you did otherwise. So while doing this, while doing the whole being completely engaged in life, though, inwardly, you have to be in your practice. You need to develop the ability to do your practice while doing anything. I mean, you've all heard me talk about sitting practice, right? My least favorite thing in the world. Oh, we're going to sit in meditation. And I'm like, but, that has its place. And a lot of people benefit from that. But there is a kind of practice that you can develop that happens throughout life. My first Sufi teacher was all about that stuff. He had us practice while laying cement. That was one of my favorite ones, and I may have mentioned this story, but I'm old, so I get to repeat myself. One day we were all at the Khanega, and he comes in and he goes, "Lazy Sufis, get up. I need a walkway from here to here. Here's money. Go down to the hardware store and buy 1 bag of cement." And he had us go down and buy 1 bag of cement and mix it up and lay that. And then he said, "We need more. Go get another bag of cement." And of course, we're all thinking, why don't we just get the 20 bags of cement that we're going to need to do this? But you can't say that because he's the Sufi teacher. So we got 20 bags of cement, 1 bag at a time. It was a little bit like Keystone Cops. It's like, run in, mix up the bag of cement, spread it, run back to the store, get another bag of cement, mix it up, spread it, go, we need more, run back. And we did that for most of a good half a day until we got the walkway laid. But it did give us an amazing amount of time to be present. And an amazing amount of opportunity to confront our own egos, like, this is not how you do this. I know how to do this. I would just get all the bags of cement at once. And if I got too many, I'd take them back and get my money back. What's wrong with this guy? Doesn't he know how to lay cement? But, he's the teacher. So you're like, go get a bag of cement, mix it up, lay it out, go get another bag of cement. And all the time you're there and you're in your practice. Or you finally catch on that that's what you need to be doing. It took me about 4 bags to catch on to that, I have to admit. I was young. But
that's the thing, huh? Is that in those first 4 bags or so, you're all caught up in your ego. Like, why the hell do I have to do this? This is stupid.
Yeah.
Grr. Yep.
Yeah, that one. You know that one.
Yeah, I do.
I may have put you in that place once or twice.
Yep, and I have put students in that position as well.
Yeah,
so.
it's sort of like it's a hand-me-down.
A well-loved hand-me-down.
Yes.
Yep.
Did the teacher tell you that this is a practice?
No, he let us figure it out. And then after it was all done, it was like, so what did you learn? And, we had to come up with a good answer because he wouldn't accept the bullshit answer. If you gave him if you told him what you thought that he wanted to hear, he would rake you over the coals.
Yeah, what would he say then?
He would say something like, "Lazy Sufi, God did not give you that brain to keep your eyeballs apart." That was one of his favorite phrases. Lazy Sufi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's pretty ubiquitous within the tradition. The idea that, your work is your practice. And he would have us, do all sorts of crafty things. Like there's a particular kind, it's called a rashte. It is a belt of strings that Sufis wear. They might wear it around their waist. They might wrap it around their head like a turban, but they use it in meditation. And so one day, my teacher decided that we needed to have a bunch of those, not just for us, but so that he could give them away to people. So again, he gave us some money and sent us down to buy just miles of string. And then he showed us an example of what he wanted and said, "Make me these." And so we had to figure out, how are we going to make these? And, it's one of these fine motor skill things. And I came up with the idea. I went out into the back room that had wooden studs for walls, found 2 places, from one wall to the other that was the right distance, and drove a nail in each. And we just ran the strings back and forth, back and forth. And then you have knots in the strings to hold them together. And if you're wondering, it's 99 strings and 12 knots. And again, it's a matter of how do you stay awake while you're doing that? Because it's so easy to fall asleep into just the mechanical nature of it. I should tell you that my teacher didn't like the nails. So instead, he had 2 dervishes stand, one with a hand like this, the other across the room with a hand like that, and we ran in between them. He felt that
I
that
was
was
gonna
more
say,
again.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's had to be something that he was like, now, like this. Yep.
And that was nice too, because that got more people involved, because we could have like 4 people holding it up and 2 people running back and forth. And then we could trade off when one person got tired of running. So things like that. All of those things become part of your practice. Thoughts so far?
Well, one thing might be that in a way, it's difficult to stay conscious doing a repetitive task, but that's one kind of challenge. But staying conscious with the people in your life is a different kind of challenge.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a difference between, in Sufi practice, we have what are called zikrs, which it's kind of like, some people might equate it to like a mantra. You're repeating the same thing for a certain number of repetitions in a sequence, and you can space out. You can totally put yourself in a low-key trance state where you're not even listening to what you're saying at that point. You're not in tune to the meaning of the words. And you're at that point, are you really doing the practice? It's very challenging not to get into that. So yeah, I agree. No, you're not. That's part of the work, is as you're saying these words, you stay conscious to them. And with fellow human beings, I mean, we definitely find, most of us, all of us, that we start taking the people closest to us for granted when we see them every day, or we get in the same arguments, or the same nitpicky things come up over and over again, and we end up responding to those in very mechanical ways at some point if we're not careful. How do we either prevent that from happening, or when we see it happening, how can we change that? How can we respond differently? And that's again part of the everyday practice.
Yeah. And this is one of the things that you check in with your teacher. It's like, my wife and I are having problems. And he's like, why are you such an asshole then? Which, is not what you expect to hear.
Yeah.
I heard him point out to one man who was complaining about his wife that the only reason that his wife was acting like that is because he was being a dick. He said it a little bit more nicely.
Yeah.
And he gave him the advice, if you want her to change her behavior, you must change your behavior first.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, we cannot change other people, but that means all the responsibility for change in ourselves is on us. And if we want a situation to shift in some way, where do we begin? We begin with ourselves.
So, the work in however you want to understand it, is a process that supports family, that actually puts a certain primacy on family.
And of course, family can be defined in all kinds of ways, but nonetheless, the point stands.
Yeah. And to the point where most Sufi orders survive on their work and donations. And, you know, the work can be anything, making perfume. The order that is the perfumers in Morocco are very well off because they make some of the best natural perfumes in the world. I have a couple of bottles, and it's like, I will use a half a drop once a year because I want them to last as long as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But there are times when it comes to the donations, I used to see my teacher refuse donations from people because he knew that they couldn't actually afford to give a donation to the order.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where he gave his students money. I was one of them. There was a point where I was in between jobs for a couple of months and I was running out of cash, and my teacher walked up to me and just handed me $50. Says, "Here, you need this," and then walked off. And I'm like, isn't it supposed to go the other way?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's such a sacredness to relationship then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is the understanding that what you give to support the path must come from what we call these days your disposable income.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that, again, goes all the way back to the Prophet. You know, one of the 5 pillars of Islam is called Zakat. Zakat is the giving of alms to the poor. Usually they formalized it once a year, but it's like 1/10 of your net wealth, not your gross wealth, but the wealth that you have after you've paid all your bills and fed your family and paid the rent and, you know, got cat food and all of this kind of stuff. All of that is more important. And then out of the net that you have left, you give, which is a lot different than the churches that we see out there that say, give to us first.
Mm, and the
Tithe-
prosperity gospel type.
Tithe a
Yeah.
1/10 out of your gross. It's okay if you eat dog food as long as we get the money to keep the church running.
That is not how we work here.
No.
No.
I had a question.
Yes,
Go
go
for
for
it.
it, Jonathan.
When I do the practice and try to become awake, the condition that is most beneficial more than anything else is that I'm by myself alone, without distractions, in peace and quiet. In contrast to that, if I'm dealing with people, interacting with people, family, for example, I find people interactions are the most challenging, and if I get it right, the most life-changing experiences for me. However, the feeling of awakeness I get in a quiet, peaceful, by myself meditation practice is a very different feeling to the exhilaration of a successful people interaction.
Okay.
Is that successful people interaction, is that a kind of awakeness, or is that something
You're
different?
going to have to tell me, are you awake in the interaction?
I feel like a new sense of myself
Okay.
when I have a successful interaction with people, like I've pulled on something that I've never pulled on before, and
Then it sounds like the answer would be yes. Of the two, the interactions with people are probably the most valuable. To sit quietly is great. To just sit and be is a great thing, but to be able to hold that state while somebody is pushing your buttons is a much more valuable experience for you. Because if you can hold that state while things are tumultuous or even slightly upset, that gives you greater gains in your own awakeness. You'll discover the habits that keep you asleep more clearly there than anywhere else.
It's definitely easier to see those reflected back to you in interaction with another.
Yeah, Mr. Gurdjieff said, if you want to grow in relationship to somebody else. If you want to grow really fast, grow in relationship with somebody else with whom you are incompatible. He was, you know, a rowdy guy though, so.
Yep. Shall I read what we have in the chat box?
Yes, please.
I mean, I want to make sure, Jonathan, I'm not sure if that quite answered your question, but I hope it was helpful.
yes, it was very helpful. Thank you.
Good.
There. Okay. So Omar says, I think he's quoting Ta Hui, Zen practice in the midst of activity is a million times superior to that pursued in silence.
Damn right.
Thanks for that, Omar. And Mr. Keene says, I imagine it would be required on some. I would imagine it would require some level of energy to be able to keep awake while busy in the world.
Yes.
It does.
It really does. Therefore, do not waste your energy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But every moment that you are awake and not running the chatter in your head, you're getting energy. All the energy that would have been wasted on that chatter, you have available to you.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, you're so quiet.
I'm listening. It's been a nice conversation. Is there a question in there? Or should I talk about something?
Talk about something. What do you think? Are we completely full of it? Does this make sense?
I agree. For me, having an anchoring practice that's by myself is very useful, taking that into the chaos of the world, and it does translate. It's kind of one of the hallmarks. I guess you could say it's a test. If you do not get better at handling more chaotic and complex and stressful situations, and you're doing sitting practice, then it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with that. Yeah.
The people one I agree with as well, and it seems paradoxical, but it ain't. And I have a family as well, and I appreciate all of that. And I always wanted a family, and I also want to do the work, so it fits. No problem for me at all. It fits very nicely together. I've had learning experiences with it all, and I'm always recalibrating. So at the moment, I've changed and put a lot more energy into cooking because I'm not good at that and I need to get better at that. And then if I get better at that, then my wife has to cook less and she has time for other things and all of that. And I'm also taking Soph now, who's almost 9, out on a lot of my kind of work related or family related adventures. to give my wife a break, and that's working well too. So the kind of the family alchemical equation is always being monitored for more opportunities for harmony, and it's going well, and it can always get better, but then it's an extremely good learning environment, learning with other people, both family, friends, students, teachers. It really is. And if you have a practice as well alongside that, it's kind of like, why have one or the other? Stick them all together, mix them up.
I'm glad you mentioned cooking, because according to the Sufis, cooking is a very high art. It's really important. And you can tell that because what's the first Enneagram that we teach people, right? But when you go to a traditional Sufi house, there's the teacher, right? And there's usually his assistant. And then you have what are known as the Dervishes of Service. And they're the ones who cook the meals, serve the tea, clean the house. Regular dervishes, when they are first initiated, are not allowed to do anything. They get to sit and be served tea. They don't get to wash the glasses. They don't get to help take out the trash. Nothing, because the dervishes of service are actually some of the most developed of all of the Sufis in the place, and they are doing that work completely consciously. And the highest level of them are the tea server and the cook. The cook is the one who makes beauty happen and nurtures everybody who's there. And they have to be completely conscious while they do this. So the act of cooking food is, to us, a very high spiritual path. And so you have that side of it. And then you have my last teacher, who he ran a pizza parlor. That was how he made his living. And those of us who were his real students would take time off and come to the pizza parlor, and he would teach us how to work. Didn't just teach us how to make pizza. And that place was the best pizza parlor I have ever had pizza from. But he taught us how to work consciously at making the pizza. So anything becomes practice. You probably remember, you meaning Dave and Cherie specifically, that Lawrence has told you stories about a place out in the Arizona desert where there was a guy in a hamburger stand. And his practice was running that hamburger stand and enlightening people. And that's all he did.
So what are some activities that you find that you bring your awakeness into, Mushtaq, besides cooking, besides cleaning? For me, editing is one of mine. So copy editing specifically.
And there are two places for me. One, of course, is fencing. That is my way in some ways. And the other is doing graphic arts. I have been a professional graphic artist off and on in my life, and I still love doing it. You know, I'm the guy who does all of the weird looking slides that become the face of our And so that's important. And every kind of craft in the world. We don't have the opportunity to do much of that these days, but soon come.
Yes. Yes, Dave. Mushtaq adds in all the hidden bees. Yes. Very important. We have a lot of bees in our title cards, so if you haven't noticed them before,
Go back
Hopefully
and
you'll
look.
notice them now. Yes.
Yeah,
As
and
we
half
thought
the
about
time
one
when it's
time.
the size of a title card, you don't even notice because it's pretty
Yeah.
small. But
Mhm.
I know that they're there.
Yep. And as we said to one of our friends a while back, I guess we could say the bee is kind of our totem as Sufis in
Yep.
our community. Yep. So that's what the bees are all about.
I have a question which I'd be interested in
Yeah, go for it.
response. For me, at least, one of the main problems of being in the world is to notice when it is that I fall into whatever I guess you would call unconsciousness, you know, or but I guess that's what I'm interested in is really I would like to be able to catch it in the act and interrupt the pattern before it completes. And so what I'm looking for is, you know, what are the early signs of falling into that unconsciousness? Sometimes for me, it's a feeling of contraction and maybe massiness, but I suspect there are other signs also, you know.
Yeah, and it's going to be different for every single person. Human beings are not one size fit all. So this is actually very important because you need to learn to catch those things. And the only place that you can catch them that will work for you is at the beginning.
Right.
And most of the time, you won't notice it till the end.
Mhm.
But you'll begin to notice a pattern like, oh, I get upset in this way and I fall asleep. So you start your self observation and you watch for that.
Right.
You keep an eye out for, oh, here comes the pattern. And at that moment, when it's rearing its ugly head, you can interrupt it.
Right.
And there are specific practices that each person works with to do that. The first of which is working with your breath.
Mm-hmm.
See the pattern come up and breathe into it. Do your breath practice.
Mhm.
Yep. And we're always banging on about that because if there is anything that could be considered one size fits all-ish, it's the breath practice.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I guess what I'm interested in hearing is what are some of the other clues? I mean, I've noticed some of the clues in myself. Okay, one of those I mentioned, this feeling of contraction, and which eventually goes into identifying with some identity, and then, you know, I'm off to the races. But and sometimes it's certain mass is happening. But I wonder what are some of the others? I would imagine watching your breath and seeing that become agitated might be one area.
Yeah.
The question would be, what are some of the other signs for Noor or for Dave,
right,
or for Nancy? Because
more
they're all going to be different. It's not going to be universal. I've never experienced that sense of contraction that you talk about. I do it in a totally different way.
Mm-hmm. Yet I would suspect that we can learn from each other. I mean, I suspect very much the case that mine is not unique to me, and some of the stuff that you're catching isn't unique to you, and might be helpful to hear what some of these other ones are.
It is more helpful to hear how to stop it, because that tends to be more universal.
Well, on that score, you know, it's interesting enough that, I mean, you know, the breath thing is one thing, but, you know, a guy that I learned quite a bit from, Junko, I mean, he's got a set of katas, you know, almost like physical exercises to interrupt a pattern like that. You know, like when you're about to cave in. No, I'm not going to.
That works because a lot of these patterns are anchored in your physicality. And if you move differently, breathe differently, speak differently, it's going to change it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Ilma?
Yeah.
I have a suggestion that you might, when I'm observing myself and if my ego is starting to override the particular situation or conversation, that I have stopped listening to the other person, that it's more important for me to express what I want, what I need, that contraction feeling might be that you can't think of what the other person might be talking about or feeling, that you can't see their perspective and you're just narrowed down to your own. That could be part of your self-observation, because sometimes I notice that if I've got too narrow in my focus on something and the other person's starting to object and I don't notice, that's when I'm going to get into trouble. So I lost my presence because all I was thinking about was my own thing.
Makes sense. Though it sounds to me that for me, that's several steps down the road already. I would love to catch it way before that. You know, in other words, I would like to before I identify with a particular ego identity, you know, and so I'm looking for clues of I'm about to jump into this, you know, this unconscious.
Well, you keep talking over the person. You keep talking over the person and you stop listening. You keep interrupting them, you've stopped listening. You keep going back to your thing, you've stopped listening. Start there.
Yeah. Or if you want to specifically, you think of a time that you did this, that you know that you did this. The more recent, the better. And then you're a philosopher. Do a phenomenological reduction on that experience.
And
There's where you're going to find your clues.
And that's what I've done, and that's where I found some of the clues. And I'm just basically looking for an expansion of the universe of clues, basically, I guess is what I'm looking for. And the sort of thing you suggest, Sherry, makes a lot of sense to me, except it does seem to me already, if I'm to that point, I'm already pretty much into identifying with a particular identity and speaking from that point of view, you know, or acting from that point of view. And I would love to catch it earlier than that, you know.
I have a suggestion, and I'm not sure this is correct. It just seems plausible, which is look for general awareness, because you probably have some idea of what you think you're looking for, and it might not be accurate. Whereas if you cultivate a more general continuous awareness, you have a better chance to notice things.
Explain more. I'm not quite sure I follow that.
Okay. Suppose you have an idea of that you get into trouble in some way that you can identify, and you want to find the whole process. And you probably have some ideas of what you are looking for, and they might not be accurate. Whereas if you cultivate an ability to just notice what you're doing in general, then you'll start saying, oh, that's where I'm off balance. Or that's what off balance feels like.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So basically paying attention to what you're doing. Yes, I mean, that makes sense.
So I'm going to give you a practice, Ilmar, which you can do or not do, but if you do it, it will solve this for you, which is before you say anything, take one breath and center your attention right here, and then speak. But observe what you're speaking as you speak it. If you do that every time you open your mouth, you will get out of these mechanical habits very, very quickly. Guaranteed, money back if it doesn't work.
All right.
This is, it has a scientific basis.
So did you say up here?
Yeah.
So why there? I'm curious about that.
I am actually about to mention that this is in general semantics called a cortical thalamatic pause, which is designed to take you from the reactionary hormones of the thalamus and bring you up to your cortex and neocortex to think through what you're saying rather than react from what you're saying. And you put your attention right here because that's where you want it to be. You want to be in your neocortex.
Seems like a good practice.
It works.
Yeah.
At least it worked for me.
Right.
It makes you talk a little bit more slowly.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nope. Well, sometimes people think you're a little weird because it'll be like Noor would say something to me and I would go, okay, here's my answer.
I feel like I do that all the time.
Well, you do now. You caught it from me.
I caught it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Is it okay if I read what Dave has to say?
Of course it's okay.
And thank you for that, Nancy and Mushtaq. Dave says, would you like an Ilmar specific physical clue? Is that what you meant, Dave? Yes, okay.
Are you asking me, Dave, or?
Yeah.
You would be the Ilmar in the room.
Well, but I'm looking at the sentence, so I wasn't quite sure who was addressed. But yes, I'd love to see one.
Okay, so I sit here on my meditation cushion because that's how I like to sit at the computer. And I have a triadic awareness when I'm doing these things. Part is on my posture in the room, part is on the person speaking, and part is on all the Brady Bunch people up here. And I triangulate between all of them at once. And you can take this or leave this, but when I see you disappear, you retreat backwards into the screen and your hand goes to your chin. So try and see if you can feel yourself do that whilst you watch. Or not.
Okay. And what is that a clue for?
You would have to tell us.
The physical cue. So you were asking about signs and symptoms and cues. It's a postural cue related to awareness.
And Dave, of course, can't read your mind, so you have to kind of investigate for yourself. Okay, what is going on when I mean, I have to think about that with my own little quirks and stuff as well.
And
Yeah,
we all
people
have them.
Yeah.
Habitual gestures.
Yep.
You can see on the physical body if you are looking at a physical body and you are aware. So the best way is to find your own ones. I know my ones, or at least some of them. There's plenty still left that I find normally each month as I'm dredging things out, which is always interesting. But the body is super useful. The spine collapsing is the classic meditation one. That's why you get hit with the Zen sick. But the facial gestural expressions and where the hands go and where the person orientates in the room when they hear something they like or don't like are also really good physical and spatial cues. So you have this cuboid thing, a space with you in it. What are you doing in that whilst this is happening, whilst we're talking about stuff that's very interesting or inflammatory?
You know, Dave, you should write a book on this.
Perhaps, he says. Yeah, so I'm actually glad you brought that up because I was thinking, you know, we're being a bit like mental and abstract and stuff. I do think it is important if we're going to talk about those things, about being very present with ourselves, to touch on the physical. So I'm glad that we're doing that. And like Mushtaq said, that's going to be unique to everyone, which is very important to consider because we don't want to start taking someone else's posture shift or whatever in saying, oh, I do the same thing, it must mean the same thing, because that's not going to be the case.
Yeah, when you start learning to watch body language, that's the first thing that you learn. You don't know what that gesture or what that shift means. You just know that it means something.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Your job, depending on what you're doing, it may be your job to find out what it means, but you can't know anything from a single gesture, except in the most general terms. Like if somebody looks up, I can generalize that they're making a picture in their head about something. But I don't know what that picture is. And I don't even know for sure if that's the case. It's just high probability.
Yep, exactly.
So you see somebody who's sitting like this, and people will look at that and go, oh, he's being very, very guarded. But it also might mean that I have not turned the heater on in this house all day and the room is cold.
Sure.
Could mean either of those. So how do you know? And the answer is you don't until you find out. But let us get back to the idea of in the world, but not of the world. Of the 9 principles that we teach, one of which is Khawat dar Anjuman, which means solitude in the crowd. And it particularly specifically addresses this idea of being always inwardly in your practice while doing everything in your life that you need to do that is necessary, or sometimes just fun. Believe it or not, you're allowed to have fun as part of your practice. So basically, that's what we're talking about tonight.
Yes.
Remember, your life has rights over you. And any group that says that they are more important than your family is a group that you should avoid.
Yes.
Any group that says it's more important that you give us money than you feed your kids is a group that you should avoid.
We've been watching a lot of Scientology stuff lately, so this
Don't
is
say
very...
that word.
I'm not ashamed and I'm not afraid. Like, for real though, I mean, it is so critical to stay attuned to yourself, to stay attuned to those who are potentially depending on you, or you've signed up to be accountable, to be responsible in your relationship. There's no real taking a vacation from that, even when we're talking about spiritual matters. It's all part of the same thing. Yes.
So we invite you to use your life as the main tool for your own spiritual development. I mean, what else have you got? I could give you a mantra, but a mantra is probably not as useful as your life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This way is a little bit harder. You could go to a monastery. You could give up everything. You could be fed, and you can sit and meditate all day and then go and sweep the porticos, but you may miss something that way.
I gotta tell you, I have been tempted by the idea of just signing up to go off to a monastery for realsies, and it struck me over time that my motivation there was escapism rather than a spiritual life per se. So speaking for myself personally, a spiritual life for me means taking part in everyday things. That's me not copping out.
So, who haven't we heard from? Zainab, what do you think?
Palin.
Zainab.
Chris.
Yes, talk to us. Or not.
I'm going to put Zainab on the spot first.
Okay, Zainab, you're on the spot.
I just wanted to add something on being in the world. For me, is can help to escape the mechanicalness. It puts you into the shocks that that makes you to be present. Rather than just being in the monastery or sitting on a cushion where it can put you into trance and yeah. I've just noticed that like sometimes life can get quite busy with everything, the chaos, but paying attention and being present will make you do that leap and do the jumps.
Definitely, Zainab. Thank you. Chris, are you up for chiming in?
Yes, I had a question. I'm curious to know if you have any kind of order of it, like focus of self, family, community. Like, is there a kind of order of prioritization there or anything?
That's an interesting question. What do you think, Mushtaq?
Take care of yourself first, in the sense of make sure that you are strong and healthy, because if you're not, you can't really do anything else.
Yeah.
Then you take care of your family. Even your family is just your girlfriend, you know, but also your mother, your father, you know, however you constitute your family, you have an obligation to them.
Agreed. Yeah.
And then to your community, and then to your spiritual path, which is usually part of your community. You notice that we put the spiritual path on the bottom of that, not on the top, which is a little bit different. So does that answer your question, Chris?
It does. Thank you very much. And I'm also curious to know if there's any kind of principles that you might share with us around making some of our everyday interactions and tasks enriched with presence. If there's any particular principles you might have, be helpful.
First one, and you're going to hear us say this over and over again: stay in your breath.
Yep.
You do you have a breath practice yet that you do?
No.
Does it work for you?
I don't really have an established practice there.
Okay, then remind me, and I will point you at a couple of videos that will help you with that. And start there, very first thing.
Yes. So yeah, get in touch with us, Chris. And there are various ways to do that. All of which we
send us he's on the forum, so
okay, great, good.
Yeah,
I wanted to make
send us a message through the forum, and we will get you set up with something. And if I can't find a proper video, I'll make one and post it to the forum, because we could all use that.
Yep, we could, especially right now, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's everybody who's up for chatting tonight, for chiming in tonight. Yeah.
So any last thoughts before we sign off?
What's that? Oh yeah, go for it, Shri.
It was an instruction to me from Lawrence that in the awareness and in the presence that we're practicing is to keep your heart open. Because if you're under distress or you're being challenged in some way, it's very easy to shut yourself down heart-wise and you stop the love going in and out. So he said, keep your heart open. He said, love them as they are, even if they're pissing you off at the time, love them as they are. And that was a good practice for me, because in that moment, they can't hear me, but I can hear them and I can see them, and my awareness and presence and just that stillness that comes from the practice on my own, I can bring it into the world. And so keeping that heart open when I'm challenged has been very powerful. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Cherie. Actually, I mean, I've been thinking about that lately in terms of given how much interaction goes on online, not just face to face. I've been thinking about that in terms of online interactions in the sense that, you know, even if I'm not actively engaging, maybe something frustrates me, startles me, makes me angry, I can still find that place inside of myself that is not going to shut down and shut off from connection in a more holistic sense. You know, it's not about the direct interaction so much as staying connected to the essence of all that is, including people who I strongly disagree with. I mean, all of that requires you to stay open and open in the heart, in all the senses. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Dave has a comment. Giving up coffee plus watching Scientology. Strong tapas. Yes, indeed you do.
Yep. All right, so that's all I've got. I think we have touched on a lot of cool stuff tonight in terms of opportunities for practice. And I think that's a good thing.
So we are all on Brady Bunch view now. For any last thoughts or questions?
I was thinking about how this was connected to last week's talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I assume that part of this is getting involved with the common beliefs enough so that you can live with the people in your society, but at the same time not actually believing them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like dating Maya but not marrying her.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep. Well, thanks for that tie back, Nancy. I appreciate that too. Do you have anything to add, Mushtaq?
Just thank you all for coming. Jonathan, I'm glad that you came back and that we didn't scare you away.
No.
That makes me very, very happy.
Yeah, me
Chris,
too.
it's a pleasure to meet you, and I hope that we will see you on one of these things again.
Yay, thumbs up to that.
Yeah.
All right, everyone, shall we? You are welcome. Shall we do our wave goodbye to everybody?
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you next
Join
time.
us next time.
Yeah.